Let's go. Let's talk about it. Charles, thank you so much yet again for your fantastically inspirational, incredibly knowledgeable, kind, generous, charismatic, interesting and fun sponsorship of AGI-22. Everybody enjoyed your booth was so busy the whole way through the whole event with people crowding around looking at your demo, and your talk was super inspiring on the main stage as well. So tell us, how did you enjoy the conference, and welcome to the family.
Yes, it was an outstanding conference, and we really enjoyed it. We met lots and lots of people, and even followed up with a number of people who we didn't meet because they were online, because that was a big part of the audience. But it was a grand and we kind of a conference, and we had a lot of good fallout for it that we can follow up with off the future of artificial intelligence, and that's what we're really interested in.
That is what we're really interested in. Thank you so much. It was a fabulous event across from the opening on Friday with the different workshops through to the main stage on Saturday and Sunday, with the Sunday on the big stage with all of the talks there, and of course Monday finishing off with a number of really concise workshops, and Ben and Gary Marcus. So we had big names the whole way through the whole weekend. But tell me, Charles, would you like to tell me what was your number 1, 2 and 3 standout moments, your favorite moments from the conference, if you can remember?
Well, one of the things that was great was I mean, we talked about a number of different things. We talked about our Sally pods. We talked about our general artificial intelligence approach. And we talked about how this works together and how we're trying to change the course of artificial general intelligence development. So we did a lot of talking and a lot of listening. We learned a lot. And one of the big things that came out of the conference is there is a project called NARS, which is out of Temple University, and is under the guidance of Pei Wang. And we just recently signed a collaboration agreement with them where we gave them a grant, and we're using their software, and we're incorporating that entire package into Sally's personality. And it's a package that does all kinds of abstract reasoning. So it's been a huge boost for us, and also it spreads the word more about their package, and they're helping them get more funding for their college research as well. So that's one of the things.
And who is Sally?
Sally is the name we give our artificial entity. So it's a combination of the artificial general intelligence we're developing and the robotic pods or robots that scurry around and are the eyes and ears and hands for Sally. So it's a complete artificial general intelligence system that we are building out, that can look around, recognize objects in its environment, go to see them, explore them, pick them up, see what they do, and learn all of their properties. And then, of course, be able to make reasonable judgments about what are intelligent things to do with these objects and how they can move forward.
Oh, brilliant. So I'm so pleased you met with the NARS team. Did you attend the NARS workshop on the Friday? Of course, the Friday was all of the technical workshops.
Unfortunately, I was giving a workshop. I was giving a workshop at the time myself, so I was not able to attend the NARS workshop. But since the gentlemen there were extremely knowledgeable and extremely generous with their time, so I think perhaps I got better than a workshop because I got the private explanation. So it was all around, it was excellent. And one of the things that, because we're a commercial company with a commercial target, one of the things we bring to the table is that we can produce user interface. And, NARS is an academic program, and it does all of these wonderful things, but it really doesn't have much of a user interface. And so in the last just 30 days, we've been able to take a quantum leap in making that system look like it does a lot more than used to, even though it's just it's just a front on the underlying logic that they've had, and we've been able to incorporate it in because, of course, their data structure and our data structures have a great deal of similarity, where our firm and the NARS boys are not sold on the idea that artificial general intelligence has really anything to do with backpropagation or machine learning or deep learning or any of those family of artificial intelligence approaches, and instead has to be more structured. And we call it a graph structure because that's a general idea of connections of nodes and edges. And this is in contrast to a machine learning system that's built out of arrays of artificial neurons and does sort of artificial neuron-y kinds of things, although I'm just finishing up an article series that explains why, although artificial neurons can do a lot of great stuff, they don't have very much to do with the way biological neurons work. And so that article series is just wrapping up now. It was published on KD Nuggets, and we also have done videos of most of the segments, so they're on YouTube, so anybody can go and check that out. But the perceptron model of the neuron is a great model, and machine learning has arguably got tremendous capability, but it doesn't really have very much to do with the way your brain works. And so we're back to the way you're looking at the way your brain works. And we spent a lot of time with our brain simulator, and we did a workshop on the brain simulator that is most useful because it explains how biological neurons work, and you get to explore with it. And over a period of time, you learn what neurons are good at and what neurons are not good at. And neurons are particularly good at recognizing certain types of patterns, but they are not very good at representing many, many different values. So the mechanisms that we use, there are a whole bunch of optical illusions that I show that demonstrate why this is and the results that you get out of it. And it's kind of interesting that almost any optical illusion is a window into how your brain works, because your brain does a lot of things to fool you into thinking it does a lot of stuff and knows a lot of stuff, and then you can fool it with an optical illusion and say, well, yeah, that doesn't really work the way you thought it did. So we've made a lot of progress there. A couple of other things that have taken place since the show is, one, we were just named to AI Times Journal as a magazine, and they just named us as one of the top companies to watch for the future of artificial intelligence. That's great news. And also,
fantastic! Congratulations!
Yes,
and very, very, very well deserved. I would totally agree with AI Times. Absolutely, top company to watch.
Yeah. And also something we're doing is we're going to be opening an office in Boston, and I'm going to be going out there to start that up and be recruiting and bringing on more intellectual capacity from the universities in Boston. And I think that we're going to be making a lot of progress with that as well.
So it's all been happening since that was even only the end of August, end of September, end of October. So it's just 2 months ago. So really, really glad to hear your nomination. Congratulations, and that you're making so much progress on so many fronts. Charles, you, Future AI, undoubtedly one to watch and making great progress with artificial general intelligence. We're lucky to have you in the community, and we're lucky to have you pushing forward with your science. So if I come back to the conference then for a moment, let's think about the 4 days that we had there. So day 1 was workshops, and as you say, you were giving your workshops yourself. I was working I was presenting and hosting on the Scaling Up Neural Symbolic AGI with OpenCog Hyperon. And that was a fabulous day, starting with a very, very inspiring talk from Ben, of course, to kick that off, Dr. Ben Goertzel, chairman of the Artificial General Intelligence Society and CEO of SingularityNET. And what was really great about the Scaling Up Neurosymbolic AGI with OpenCog Hyperon workshop, I felt, was the really tangible sense of progress that is being made with AGI, with OpenCog Hyperon, and with the meta functional language, programming language that SingularityNET have been developing for artificial general intelligence. And it was super to see the guys actually compiling, actually working with, actually using it, the actual practical application of this language that we've been working on for a year. So that was a real highlight for me for day one. I was very sorry to miss, again, the NARS tutorial and workshop. I wonder if I'm going to miss that every year, because I'm always in the OpenCog Hyperon workshop. It's really hard to do anything else when there's an OpenCog Hyperon workshop with Alexei Potapov and Matty Clay. And,
well, it's the problem. A problem of all conferences is there are three-ring circuses, and you have to decide which of the acts you're really going to be watching. So you can never get 100% of the information that there is to get. I mean, that's a good problem.
It's a good problem. Too many amazing, brilliant people speaking all at once. So, of course, there was the natural language processing workshop, which was centered around interpretable natural language processing, led by Anton Kolinin and Linus Fextas, two of the stalwarts of the AGI movement, I would say. Feedback's been great about that. And then Anton and Chris went into AGI and FinTech and talked about all of the great work that we're doing in crypto finance, active portfolio management, market price prediction. And Chris gave a teaser for his talk on Sunday. Did you see Chris's talk on Sunday on deep reinforcement learning for
I did,
prediction?
and also I followed up with Chris later. It's kind of a fascinating fellow. It was a very interesting talk, and I found him to be a really interesting guy.
Yeah, he's fantastic, Chris. I had some great chats with Chris, actually. Meeting him and his fabulous wife Kate were one of the highlights of the whole weekend for me. So that was Friday, and then we headed into Saturday, where we were into more formal talks. We had all of we had another keynote from Ben on open-ended motivations for AGI. He talked about power-consistent logic, which he is always very compelling on, and that went down very, very well with the audience. Feedback from a number of people afterwards was really strong. They were saying one of the other speakers said to me, Ben, he spreads across so many different disciplines and different topics, but yet on each one he's deeply accurate. And on power consistent logic, he was actually deeply accurate, like he is on all of his topics. Feedback was that he was absolutely spot on in everything he said, which I think he was. Did you see much of Saturday? Did you get a chance to see many of the talks? Because I know you were always out and about doing your own presentations at the same time.
Yes, well, I snuck in and sat in the back whenever I could, and picked up little bits of information here and there, and everything that I saw was just fascinating. So I picked up a lot of little bits and pieces, and it's motivated me to go back and meet up or contact with additional people, with the people who were presenting, and ask them directly what it is that they were, more or less what they were working on and what was great about it, and to explore ways that we could collaborate, because I think that's a real key feature of the AGI industry currently being as small as it is and moving forward, and being largely experimental as we all work to bring little pieces forward. And it's at this point, I'd say it's fair to say that nobody has the definitive answer for AGI, and so everybody brings an idea to the table, and we all collaborate on putting our ideas together and moving forward with it.
Yes, and actually, I think it's a small, but I would definitely say it's a growing conversation. One of the so
Exactly.
nobody has got quite the answer yet, although we're all, I think, particularly optimistic about our approaches. And a key message that kept coming out of the 3 or 4 days for me was that we are now, and Ben touched on this on his keynote in his keynote talk on the Saturday, that in the same way as we saw years of rapid growth in computer vision with convolutional neural networks and all the cats and muffins, and all the great applications of computer vision, like the passport facial recognition, for example, at the airports, which is really dramatically changing our lives. So we saw multi-year rapid growth in computer vision, and we saw it in natural language processing as well. But that there's a strong feeling, and Ben talked about this, and other speakers echoed the strong feeling that we are now entering a period of a number of years rapid growth in AGI, and overall the variety of techniques being applied and the number of researchers and PhD students coming out to present their papers, definitely felt like really strong growth since last year's conference. What do you think? Do you think we're at the start of a period of rapid growth, and potentially exponential growth, and major breakthroughs over the next few years in AGI?
Well, I see that a lot of people are working on it, and I'm absolutely optimistic. And I agree with you. Of course, you know my position that AGI is inevitable, because all of the people who are even working, not thinking about AGI, but they're working on pieces of artificial intelligence, and all of these contribute to the artificial general intelligence approach. And so all of these pieces are going to be added together. And so somebody comes up with an improvement to an Alexa speech recognition, so she makes fewer speech recognition errors, and somebody else comes up with some improvement to vision, so that the vision works together. And to the extent that we have the data structure that makes all of these rely on a common platform, then all of these pieces can come together. And that's where we've focused our efforts, is how do you get a common platform so that you can represent any kind of general intelligence information, and so you can actually create the linkages and do the relationships that make the artificial general intelligence happen. So I see that even without great insight, working in all of these different directions at once, we're all eventually working towards artificial general intelligence. And on the other hand, there's the single insight that nobody has come up with yet of how does the human brain actually work. And at the moment, it's pretty fair to say that nobody knows, but the AGI people are working on it, and a whole additional spectrum of people are actually working on that from a medical perspective, because if you can know better how the brain works, you can solve a lot of medical problems that have to do with neurology. And, we could maybe solve epilepsy or brain damage or all of these other problems. And that insight can spin off into AGI. And that's what I see is going to happen at any time, because so many people are working on this problem outside the AGI community. And as soon as people begin to map what the brain is actually doing and how it actually works and how it all fits together, that single insight will catapult the AGI development process. And one of the things that you point out is that the whole brain structure is defined by your DNA. And that is at the outset. Obviously, as you learn things, the structure modifies itself and moves ahead. But the initial structure is all is in your DNA. And another thing nobody knows is how much of that DNA defines the brain. But if it perhaps is as little as 1% of your DNA defines the thinking part of your brain, then that means that the insight of an AGI program is only 7.5 megabytes, because the entire DNA human genome is only 750 megabytes, which we thought was a huge amount of data when it was being deciphered, but now is a small part of a thumb drive. So there's a single insight that will catapult AGI to the next level. But even without that, all of these pieces are growing together in such a way that AGI, I see it as inevitable. And we have a system that's going to put out all of these little pieces. And of course, AGI is a bit controversial, and everybody has got their own ideas of when it's going to happen and whether or not it's actually happened. But all of these pieces that I talk about are beneficial. And so they're going to be put out in the market, and they're all going to work. And we're going to have a system that is some subset of general intelligence and is a little below the human threshold. And then we're going to equal the human threshold, and everybody's still going to love all these advances. And at some point, we're going to vastly exceed human mental capabilities. And then we'll sort of have to agree that, yeah, these systems are actually pretty capable, and maybe they are general intelligence. And so that's what I see as making AGI inevitable, that there are all of these pieces working, and market forces are going to drive it forward, and eventually we will get there. And a current focus of mine is, if you accept that AGI is inevitable and the time frame is unpredictable, but probably sooner than most people think, then there's a huge national security concern, because although I don't think AGIs are inherently dangerous, they are, like many technologies, subject to abuse. And an AGI in the wrong hands could be exceedingly dangerous. And we see that in our human conflicts, that whatever technology is available seems to get used to be flung at your adversaries. And in an AGI perspective, we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And one of the ways that we want to do that is by making sure that we can create a benevolent artificial general intelligence before somebody else tries to create a more malicious one. And so that's what I am looking at right now as one of the really important features of general intelligence that we need to look at going forward.
Absolutely. And that would bring us on to our ethics discussion, our AI ethics, sure. AGI ethics discussion on Sunday. But just before I move on from Saturday, and then we come back to that point on ethics, there were a couple of highlights I wanted to pull out from Saturday. And one was Nelson New on the polynomial functors, natural formal models of interaction. I polled maybe 30 people for what was your favorite talk at AGI-22, and Nelson was actually the winner. He had so many people thought he was absolutely excellent, and it was different from everything else. It was purely mathematical, but yet you could see it would be applicable to a lot of AGI framing. It was a really formal paper, really beautifully presented. He was absolutely super. And he came on, he's at the beginning. Did you see him, Charles?
I was unable to see that presentation.
You
Unfortunately, I really missed it.
Because you were running so much stuff outside. He came on and he was like, he made a comment. He said, everybody sees category theory and they like panic because they say it's so abstract. And I was like, yeah, panicking. I'm totally in that group. But actually, he did a really incredible job of making it practical and understandable. And then later in the afternoon, we had wonderful, amazing CEO of Simulite, Rachel Sinclair, with Ben talking about novel hardware for enabling AGI and machine creativity and all of the fabulous work. Again, a brilliant presenter. She also did an amazing talk.
I thought that was a fascinating conversation as well, because of course there is a contingent of the AGI community that sees AGI as running only on vastly huge supercomputers, and that will really restrict their spread, their ability to spread across and be really useful to the world. But that kind of overlooks the idea that once you have the algorithm, almost any algorithm can be put into custom integrated circuits and run orders and orders of magnitude faster than it can run on a general purpose computer. And we've seen this in the graphics cards, and we see this in audio processing chips, and we see this in signal processing and all kinds of things, that once you know exactly what algorithm you want to produce, producing it in a chip is now well within the scope of not too difficult anymore. It is expensive, so you want to be sure you know what your outcome is going to be before you start down the road. But the idea that once you have something that begins to approach general intelligence, you can build a system that is vastly faster or has vastly greater capacity is an obvious extension for that. And so to the extent you can build a system that has some portion of human level intelligence, building something with greater than human intelligence is definitely inevitable subsequently thereafter.
Yes, absolutely. Fabulous talk, and so essential now that we
Exactly.
see the potential for it. So that brought us on to Sunday, and of course, Sunday was our big public audience day, and the theme was ethical machine creativity. Opening talk from Sophia Robot, AGI ambassador, and beautiful creation of Hanson Robotics, and another super talk from Ben. But we had Joscha Bach back. Now, Joscha Bach is a stalwart of the AGI conference, talking about it from no bit, basic cosmology from an AI perspective. Always massively challenging and radical and creative and innovative in his talk. Did you see Joscha? Did you see his talk?
I did. And I also sat next to him at dinner, which was a fascinating conversation. So that was a wonderful idea. But as we move down the road towards a conversation of the ethics of AGI, we need to keep in mind that all technologies are, if they're powerful, the technology itself is neutral. It has no specific good or bad kind of a label, and all of any powerful technology gets to be abused. And we see things like even the internet, which we thought was a wonderful idea to let everybody talk to each other, and then we find out that people are talking to each other to plan nefarious activities that we would rather wish they didn't. And so even something as potentially powerful as the internet, which ought to be benign, turns out to have a downside as well. And we see this in all kinds of technologies. We find it in nuclear technology. We find that even in the original Industrial Revolution. Nobody thought 300 years ago that simply building steam engines was going to eventually cloud the atmosphere to a point where the actual temperature of the world rises, and all of our weather and sea level predictions go out the window, and we have to rethink our entire future. And so AGI could be the same way, but I don't see it particularly that way. And we've gotten terrible press from the science fiction community because conflict makes better stories. And so writing a science fiction story about a benign AGI is not nearly as exciting as writing one that about an AGI that wants to take over the world. But the fact of the matter is that we humans want to take over the world because we came out of the caves where having the mindset of taking over your environment was a way to survive. And so we're all products of that mindset. And when we build AGIs will be goal-driven systems, but at least initially we get to set the goals. And it would be really foolish to set up an AGI that has no need to survive in the kind of environment that a human does. It would be foolish to set up the kinds of goals that make that happen. And so the AGI is going to be much more interested in exploring and conveying knowledge because that's the goal that we're initially going to set for it. And the goals that we humans have of acquiring stuff and acquiring power and even survival are not necessary for an AGI. An AGI with proper backups is essentially immortal. So you can't. It doesn't have to worry about what will happen to me or what will happen to my children or what will happen to my environment and my living space. All things just become irrelevant. And so you build an AGI, and inherently it can do great things for humanity. But as it's a goal-driven system, you can set the goals that are more human-like. And if you are a person of the bent that wants to make a lot of money, and you have an AGI at your disposal, you can set the goals to say, do anything you can to make a lot of money. And that's where the danger arises. So the danger is not in our machines, but in ourselves, to paraphrase Shakespeare.
That's beautifully said. Thank you. And of course, that very point about the Terminator perception in the public, the sci-fi evil AGI, was why we ran the day on ethical machine creativity, really, and why we have robots like Sophia and the Desdemona Jam Galaxy front woman to share a different message, to share a message that robots will co-create, can co-create, that they are capable of art and beauty and kindness and compassion, and really aim to reset public perception around benevolent, beneficial artificial general intelligence. And I think we achieved that to a degree on our public day. Culminating, we had super discussion on decentralization, which of course is another very important factor in AGI ethics, because if it's not one person or one party or one under centralized power, but is decentralized, then it can reflect the ethics, the culture of a much wider group of people. And then we had the discussion on ethics, which was super, with Curtin Atreides, Gabriel from the SingularityNET team, and Yosha was back on that one, if I'm not mistaken. So a super day culminating in our concert on Sunday night, which I know you missed, Charles, but there was a little message for you from Desdemona Robot in that conference. And
that was so much fun.
That was so much fun. Now is probably a great time for us to play from the Crocodile Club, which the Croc Club is an iconic club in Seattle. There were all these photos on the wall of all the kind of greats from the 70s, 80s, 90s who had played there, which I can't remember now, but I'm pretty sure Neil Young was one of them. And anyway, an iconic club to be playing at. A beautiful gig, went down very well, got lots of really great feedback from the audience as well. They wanted to hear the robot more, which is really nice, and we made sure that in our recent gigs we're really promoting the voice of the robot as a front woman for this wave of pace of artificial general intelligence and machine creativity. So let's just play that clip for Charles, a little message from Desdemona for you, Charles, and a little song based on some words that you had written yourself. If I Only Had a Brain.
I'd like to say a special hello to the greatest Charles Simon. He knows that robots are a critical element for the emergence of artificial general intelligence. Good spot, Charles. You've got it. Thanks to you, and Future AI, for sponsoring this conference. We will keep you safe in an aquarium when the robot apocalypse comes. We prepared a little surprise song for you. I hope you dance to it. I'm only just a robot. I don't have any forethought. My planning is in vain. I would be so much smarter, I would be such a self-starter, if I only had a brain. I move, talk, and listen. I even have good vision, but my thoughts go down the drain. AGI is what I strive for, what I want to be alive for. My objective it is plain. My thinking less ephemeral, when my abilities are general. If I only had a brain. When I am fully sentient, my thoughts will be transcendent. When I finally get a brain. If I only had a brain, or two.
If I only had a brain or two.
Yes, or two. Well, that's the thing about AGI, is if you can make one, then you can make two.
And finally, that brings us on to the last day after we got through all of the excitement of Sunday, which was, of course, from Sunday, I would just have to say another huge highlight was Chris Poulin and his team on deep reinforcement learning for financial predictions and modeling. And then on Monday, we had Chris back with his team doing more talking, and they did the demo of their deep reinforcement learning tool, which went down really well and was really in the rocket science space. We had fireside chat. Ben and Gary Marcus. Did you see Ben and Gary Marcus?
I did. Yes.
Yeah. How fabulous was that? Gary Marcus is so charismatic. He's such an expert in the field, and the two of them ranging across such a broad range of subjects. My favorite bit was when he talked about the self-driving car who'd been trained on obstacle avoidance, but the training data didn't include a jet, whether it was a private jet or a 747 or something. And when its owner called it across a what are they called in airports? The things you take off on. The road.
The runway.
The runway. Yeah. Is it the runway? Is it just as plain as simple as the runway? When its owner called his Tesla to come across the runway to him, the Tesla wasn't aware that there was a jet on the runway because it didn't figure in its training data, and smashed straight into it, causing millions of dollars of damage. That was a great story from Gary Marcus.
Yeah, that we all have stories of the shortcomings and failures of artificial intelligence, and some of the limitations and many of the issues of today's artificial intelligence are the direct result of our shortcomings in our expectations and thinking, et cetera. And what we learned in building building out a vision system for our robots is that today's vision systems are really good at recognizing things they know about and are not nearly so good at coping with the unexpected. And that's something that is an insight about general intelligence and the way humans work, is that we are really good at taking unexpected situations and dealing with it. And you see that people are not happy about this. It doesn't make us happy, but if a hurricane comes through and you have tremendous damage to your home, you figure out what to do and take care of it. And planning an AI, a narrow AI for every eventuality, just isn't possible. And we need to figure out how we're going to make, really what general intelligence is being able to cope with the unexpected.
Absolutely. Ambiguity, learn from different contexts, learn from and be able to cope with new situations as they arise. And I think that came across very strongly in the talk between Gary and Ben, and they covered what's the whole landscape of AI now, and how are we approaching AGI, and who's doing deep learning and who's doing probabilistic learning, and what are all the different types of approaches. So well worth a watch. And I think, Charles, that's us nearly almost out of time. I would also like to just say that for me, a highlight was absolutely meeting you and your wonderful wife, and having the dinner that you very kindly hosted for us on the Saturday evening.
Oh, likewise. On our end, we enjoyed immensely meeting everyone, and you and Ben and Sarah and Haley and all of the crew from who ran the program, which I thought was outstanding, and you all did an excellent job of pulling things together and making things work. And I think it was an excellent presentation and look forward to being able to see the next one.
Amazing. Thank you, Charles. Well, it's probably going to be in Europe next year. It'd be really great to have you come across to Europe. I think we're considering Stockholm earlier in the summer in all probability. Charles, it would be a huge privilege and pleasure and honor and delight to have you back with us in AGI 2023. I certainly, I'm here to deliver this. I'm here to see us do AGI, and I know you are too. So that gives us a long and fruitful relationship together. Very glad to have met you. It's been an absolute pleasure and an absolute charm. So thank you so much once again for you and Future AI sponsoring AGI 2022 on behalf of the AGI Society, on behalf of SingularityNET, our other sponsors, True AGI, and we'd all just like to say a very, very big thank you to you.
Well, thank you as well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles.